Hello, and welcome to another one of our Kilmainham Jail on lockdown videos. We are in the East Wing today, and this part of the jail opened in 1862. It's the most modern part of the building, and very much a kind of a classic example of a Victorian prison. But we're not going to be exploring the East Wing today. We're actually going to be heading underground. But before we do that, I just want to show you these circular discs in the floor. These were originally grills which would have allowed the light to go from the East Wing up here down into the basement. So that'll explain why it's quite dark down there these days, because they have solid covers now. So we're just going to head down. East Wing is actually looking quite beautiful today. You always have to remind yourself, though, that it is rather a sinister building designed to torture and punish people in lots of ways. So you must be seduced by how pretty it can look on a sunny day. But down here, as I said, it's much darker down here than it would have been in the 19th century, because you can just see there up in the ceiling where those roof lights would once have been located, or are still located, but as I said, they're completely covered over with solid covers now. But if you had a grate there, it would have allowed light in. So you can see here we have some kind of internal rooms, and there's no point in bringing you in there because they're actually completely dark if you don't have the light coming from the ceiling. But where we're heading now, we're heading to the lower end. We're going along a central corridor that runs pretty much the whole way along the East Wing. And if we go this way, although it's mostly kind of kitchens and boilers down here, and kind of, I suppose, infrastructure for running the prison, we do have this area which was used to punish prisoners. These are the 4 punishment cells. You can see there's a lot of tools and work which has obviously been suspended during the current crisis. We're hoping to include this part of the jail in our special alternative tours, which will hopefully be running during the summer. But before we go into the cell, I just want to show you this really interesting kind of remnant again of the infrastructure of the jail. This is where they would have had a Telltale clock. So this was a special clock, and each guard had their own unique key, and they had to come down here and key in at a particular time, and that way they could make sure that they were doing their rounds, because they would record the time that they clocked in here, and then they would record the time they clocked in at the other Telltale clocks, and that way they could make sure that they were doing their rounds at night in particular. We'll have a look into one of the cells. As I said, there's a bit of work going on at the moment. And this one has electric light, so you can get a good look at what they look like. You can see the very small window up there, and there was actually a facility to close over these punishment cells and leave the prisoners in complete darkness, which must have been particularly frightening. And actually, if we go into the cell next door, which doesn't have a light, you get a better sense of just how dark that could be. And this is with that window allowing in some light. So they were incredibly dark. Down here we also have one of my favourite bits of graffiti. It was written by a guy called John Mulvey, who was from Glencullen in Kiltiernan in County Wicklow, and he wrote, "Unto the cell I bid farewell, I want to see no more. For many a weary hour I walked from window to the door." So obviously he had grown very weary of being down here. And interestingly, in one of her short stories, Dorothy McCardle makes reference to a male prisoner being held in a punishment cell during his time in the jail during the War of Independence. So there may have been political prisoners in here as well. So you can see here, they're very, very dark. Prisoners, if they broke the prison rules, there was a few alternatives available to the authorities in terms of punishment. They could be whipped, they could have food reduced, but also they could be left down here, maybe sometimes for a day or 2 days. The longest they were allowed to leave anyone down here was 2 weeks, which just sounds horrendous. So just very carefully make our way, as you can see, the remnants of the postponed work. So down here, this is part of the boiler. We think it was probably for boiling water. You can see it's a very elaborate piece of machinery. The East Wing was built to allow the prison authorities to introduce a regime of silence and separation, which effectively meant that prisoners spent most of their day on their own in their cells. And to do that, they needed the technology that had been developed during the Industrial Revolution that would allow them to provide, I suppose, what we would now call central heating for the prisoners. And down here you kind of can see all the kind of the workings, or the remnants of the workings of that. Don't know if you can quite see there. There's a you can see there's a water tank. You've got all these kind of pipes and everything flowing all over. So this is, I suppose, where all the mechanics were placed to run the 96 cells upstairs. So we're just coming along here. So you can see here, there's windows. Can you look out into some of the prison yards? And then I think it's really interesting. These look like some kind of drying racks along the roof. And again, it looks like the remnants of a fire with a very elaborate hood over it. So it looks like something you'd associate with Lord of the Rings in the Hobbit village. So just walk along by here. So you can just see there's a passageway this way, but we're just kind of walking in through the rooms. So you can see, although we call this the basement, it's actually on ground level. And here now we have more kitchens, remnants of fires. And down here is where the food would have been prepared for the prisoners from, I suppose, the second half of the 19th century. That looks very impressive. It's actually, I think it originally came from the National Museum. It was part of a system of exhibition cases that they gave the jail in the 1960s. And this is where you were supposed to hang the keys of the exhibition cases. So it's just down here at the moment. Just to give you a kind of, I suppose, a sense of where we are. This is the big yard outside, the remnants of the boiler. So some of you may have seen that video. And then as we come through here, you can see this. This is the remnants of the food lift. So all the food would have been brought up here through this trap door. And there was a pulley system up above, and that would have brought all the food up to the prisoners in the East Wing. And what we might do is we might just head up again just to show you where that food came up. Again, it's amazing just how mechanised everything was in this jail. Oscar Wilde described it as humanity's machine. But just over here now you can see where the food came up. And apparently they could feed the East Wing in about 10 minutes. So it was, as I said, incredibly mechanised. So that's it for today. Join us again. We'll be doing another video down in the basement in part 2 of this lockdown video. Okay, talk to you soon.